I'm using Arch Linux here and I'm running an application called ZTLR, which is a generic MD editor. The interesting thing here is that the ZTLR application is installed using .rpm package, which is really meant for Fedora, but I'm still able to use it on Arch based system. And how is that possible? And that's exactly what we are going to cover today. I'm using an application called DistroBox, more on that later. But you will come across some applications and packages which is not really built for your distribution, but you have to use it. In that case, this tool will come handy. So let's start. Let's start by installing DistroBox. Let's go to distrobox.it. You can find each and every documentation on this page, including installation. Let's go to installation section. You can find pretty much every distribution and instruction for installing on it. For example, Alpine, Cinnamon, Debian, and a lot of other, including Ubuntu. Since I'm on Arch, I will install using Arch, and it is present in the, let's search Arch Linux DistroBox. It is present in the main repository of Arch Linux. So I can simply sudo pacman-s DistroBox, and since I have already installed it, shows me reinstall. I will not reinstall it and cancel it, but in your case you continue with the installation. Now if I do which DistroBox, it shows me a binary file, which means DistroBox is installed. Box version is installed. After the installation process, let's start by selecting a distribution. For this demo purpose, I will use Fedora container, and I will use this ZTLR, which is an editor, MD editor, built for Linux, macOS and Windows. But before that, let's talk about how DistroBox works and a little bit about how it does things. So let's start by creating a rectangle. Let's say it our container. This is our container, which is our Fedora container. DistroBox creates this container and mounts each and every required thing. For example, it will mount /dev/home and other essential directory like /run/sys and etc. So you can say the container is an highly integrated environment with your host computer. But the only difference is that the container will have a distribution which is defined by the image. So in our demo case, it will be Fedora container, so the system will be a Fedora.
Now many of you will say you can just download ZTLR from AUR of Arch Linux. Why don't you download it, and why do you use DistroBox?
I know, but just for demo purposes, I'm using this software. But another example is this DoSelect browser, which is used for online assessments, which is not available for Arch Linux, not even in AUR. I cannot show you this right now because they allow to download this browser only to someone who has a test and who has been invited for the test. So yeah, so for this purpose we will use the TLR uses section. Now in uses section we have multiple commands: DistroBox assemble, create, enter, and all of these. We will basically use DistroBox create and assemble most of the time. Create will directly take arguments from CLI and create the container, but DistroBox assemble command will take a file, for example distrobox.ini, where you can define the parameters that you require, and it will use that file to build the container. For example, while building the container, what additional packages you require. For example, git tmux node.js. So DistroBox will install these programs inside the container after it has done creating the container. What image to use? Does it use the NVIDIA drivers from your host computer? And some other flags. And this as well, home. We can define home as well, which directory inside the container should the home be mounted on. We can leave that to default, or if you want you can change it. So I find it more easier and more declarative way of creating your DistroBox container, because you can see what you have defined and the container will reflect all of the parameters and settings that you have defined here. But you can also use DistroBox create. It takes every argument through CLI --image --name host name, and then it will create the container. It is similar to DistroBox assemble, but Distribubox assemble takes file as an input and Distribubox create takes CLI arguments as an input. But at the end, both will create the same container. Now let's start by creating a Distribubox ini file and start defining our parameters. I have already created a Distribubox ini file. Let's change it. We will use Fedora. We will use Fedora latest. As an additional package, let it just be git pull true. It will pull the image. Replace, if there is a container named Fedora, then it will remove and recreate the container if the replace is set to true. Start now. Yes, it will start immediately after creating the container. And let's not tinker with home for now. And done. This is the basic .distribubox ini file that you need to create a Distribubox container. Now we can move to our CLI and we have the file here. And the commands are pretty flexible. I can type Distribubox -assemble as well, Distribubox assemble, or I can just create a space here. Now after Distribubox assemble, we need to pass create, and then it will automatically detect a Distribubox.ini file is present in our current directory and it will create the container according to it. Now hit enter. Since we had the replace argument to true, it first tried to remove the existing container if any, but since it was not present, an error. But that's not a problem for us. Cannot find container. Done. Creating Fedora. Now since it doesn't have the image, it pulled the image. After that, it created the container. Distribubox successfully created Fedora, and now it is installing basic packages. This process can take a little longer since it is installing our defined packages which we had in our additional packages, as well as other applications which are required to run the Distribubox. It might take 1 or 2 minutes depending on your internet speed and system. The process is completed. After it had installed the basic packages, it did some other things and set the container according to our current system. So if you now use Distribubox list command, it will list you the current running containers. We have Fedora here. Now you can also see the container by using docker ps. It will show the container right here. Now let's enter inside the container. Distribubox, enter and tab. It will autocomplete, and if you hit enter right now, first time user password setup. Okay, done. With some warning, it did complete the process and we are inside the container right now. Since my password is less than 8 characters, it shows me this bad password thing, but it changed the password to what I supplied and we are done. Now if you see, we are still in the same directory and our cell did not change. It is same. You might be confused if I'm really inside the container because everything looks same, nothing different. One way to check is to check the OS release file. For example, if I cat OS release file, I will see Fedora Linux here, but in the lower terminal, if I do the same thing, I will see Arch Linux. So in this way, you can verify which distribution you are in currently. Now let's just start by updating the system. Sudo dnf date. Everything is up to date. If it is not up to date, you will see other informations as well. Now let's just directly move into the installation of our package. I have already downloaded ZTLR in my home directory, but since I'm in Arch Linux, it doesn't make any sense. .rpm, I cannot install it. But since our home directory is mounted inside the Distribubox container, Fedora container, I can install the package inside it. I can install the package using this command, sudo dnf install and the name of the file there. If I hit enter now, it will read the package and try to download each and every dependency that it might require. So let it continue. Since the containers are built very minimally, it might not have all of the packages which are required for an application to run. So during installation, you might see a huge size of package that need to be installed. That is perfectly fine. Let's install it all. Since it is downloading a lot of file, it might take a while. It took a while, but it installed everything required. The installation is complete. Now we are still inside the container. Now let's just start the application which we installed right now. ZATTLR. And magically, you can see it opens in our host system. I mean to say the GUI of our host system. because the GUI interface of our host machine is mounted inside the container, and that is the reason why the container is highly integrated with host OS. So now you can easily use the application without any problem. I can create new file, I can maybe edit some files in it, and since the host home directory is mounted inside the container's home directory, sharing files between container and your host machine is not a problem. But sometime you might face some errors which might be due to some applications, some packages missing. So it is always a good idea to look at the logs and find out if some packages are missing, or to find out if there is some error which you can fix, because most of the time the error will not be from the application or the container. The error will be some missing packages or missing configurations which can easily be solved. But at the end, here we are, without even installing ZTLR, using AUR or main repository of Arc, we are still running ZTLR using the RPM package. Now it can be useful for various applications which are not present in other distributions. You might come across an application which is only present for Ubuntu, let's say .deb file, which is not really present in other distributions. You can easily use this DistroBox container to spin up a Ubuntu container and install the .deb package and start running it, not a problem. Similarly, you can create as many containers as you want and as many distributions as you want. Now let's talk about cleanup. If you're done using your container, then how would you clean up? We will exit out of this container. Exit. Nothing happened. But if we check the OS release now, we are back in Arch Linux. So it might be confusing sometimes, but you can check it using the OS release file. Now, if I do DistroBox list, we have it here. To delete the container, you can simply use rm and then the container name. Yes, we want to delete. Do you want to force delete if it is running? Okay, let's talk about another command. You can start and stop the container using DistroBox stop or restart command. I'll just stop it and the container is not running anymore. Let's just cancel it and again do list. Now it is exited, it's not running. Now if we try to remove the container, it will directly remove it. Done. So the cleanup is done. In this way you can create as many containers and use as many applications, but do care about the logs which are printed on the terminal, because it might say some packages missing, some configuration missing, which can be easily fixed. To know more about DistroBox, you can easily come to its website and they have a pretty good documentation. You can find a lot of things in their documentation. They also explain how it works and some useful tips you can use. For example, creating a DistroBox with custom home directory, or run the container with real root. These all are the resources you can follow to make more use of DistroBox. Do comment if the usefulness of DistroBox just clicked right into your brain, and see you in the next one. Keep watching.